Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and in this RedGamingTech.com video, we're going to be discussing as well as analysing tech news which, as usual, has popped up in the past 24 or so hours. Hopefully you're having an amazing day. In yesterday's AMD conference, we learned an awful lot about the RDNA 2 architecture. We learned how much the RX 6000 series GPUs cost, how they perform in traditional rasterization performance against the RTX 30 series, the release dates, but there was one key thing missing: how it performed in hardware-based ray tracing. And the good news is we actually have a good understanding of this, all thanks to footnotes. But first, a quick word from the video's sponsor. Before we get into the video itself, I'd like to say that this video is sponsored by Boost Gaming. They provide the world's most secure way of purchasing a gaming credit online. They work with brands such as Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, Google, Blizzard directly. And of course your purchases are 100% secure with instant delivery, and you can be certain of the very best prices possible. You can head over to boostgaming.com via the affiliate link in the description to pick up your purchase. Thanks very much. If you mosey over to the official section on AMD's website detailing RDNA 2, in the footnotes it says, and I quote, "Measured by AMD Engineering Labs, date, on an AMD RDNA 2 based graphics card, procedural geometry samples application from Microsoft DXR SDK, and AMD RDNA 2 based GPU get 13.8 times speed up, 471 FPS, using a hardware based ray tracing versus software based fallback layer on the same clocks. Performance may vary, RX 571. If you do some further checking, this seems to be the RX 6800 XT, which has 72 compute units. AMD have very slightly detailed the ray tracing capabilities of the GPU by stating that there's one RA, ray tracing accelerator, per compute unit. We believe that this functions very similar to the Xbox Series X, which Microsoft have detailed, of course, at the Hot Chips conference. Basically, while it does have a ray tracing accelerator compute unit on the GPU, certain tasks for hardware-based ray tracing are taken care of by the texture mapping units of the GPU. Again, we've detailed this much more extensively in the Hot Chips conference, which I'll link in the video description, so I don't want to go all over that again. But this does provide us a very nice understanding of how this card does perform. According to AMD, once again, they are receiving 471 FPS, whereas if it was running in software-based ray tracing, it would just be 34 FPS, which is obviously way slower. But we can run this very same benchmark on basically any card. You can just download the pre-compiled exe. We actually did this way back in the day for the RTX 2080 Ti, I believe it was, when that first launched. So this benchmark, which isn't really a benchmark, it's pretty much just like the simplest code possible to show a ray tracing scene. Well, it does kind of give a preliminary benchmark, I suppose. Either way, the point being that you can run this on any NVIDIA card and you can get an understanding of how the GPU performs. So I tested with both an RTX 3070 and an RTX 3080. Both are Founders Edition cards. For the RTX 3070, the results were around 410 to 430. The performance jumping up and down depending what's happening during the scene itself. The RTX 3070 features 46 ray tracing cores, which is clearly considerably fewer than the 72 which is found inside the RX 6800 XT. Meanwhile, the RTX 3080, as you would probably imagine, does better still. We were getting around the low 600 mark. It was bouncing from about 620 to around 640, once again with the Founders Edition card, and it of course was altering constantly depending on what was happening on screen. I also want to apologise for using the camera to capture this. I don't have my capture device at hand at this point because I just moved and it's in like a bag somewhere. And if I used NVIDIA's Shadow Play, it slightly affects performance, which I don't think was really fair. So I figured the best option was just to whip out a camera. So I apologise for it not being exactly crystal clear. But still, you can get an idea of how this does perform against AMD's offering. What does this mean? Well, basically that the ray tracing performance of the RX 6000 series is right in line again with the leaks that I put out on the channel. It's about on par to slightly better than the RTX 2080, but if you compare it against the RTX 30 series, there's a considerable difference. And this will be fascinating how it performs against the RTX 3080 and 3070 and other cards in games, which is obviously a little different to this very simplistic synthetic benchmark. There's not a whole load of stuff which is going on in terms of rendering. It's not exactly a complicated scene. And I would be very interested to see how this scales on something like, I don't know, Minecraft RTX, for example, assuming that AMD can support that. It's not 100% clear at the moment. I mean, technically it should be able to because they're using DXR, but, you know, goodness knows how long it's going to be until it's supported. But assuming it is supported close to launch, it would be fascinating to me to see how this actually performs on something which ultimately is full path tracing, on something like Quake 2 as well. It would be very interesting to see how well that actually performs on full path tracing compared to NVIDIA or something like Control or Wolfenstein, which obviously is a hybrid rendering pipeline. Furthermore, I would also be interested to see how it performs on a closer approximation on a per CU to CU basis. About the closest that we do have is the RTX 3080 here against the 6800 XT. So I would want to see how it scales with a lower number. I'm assuming that the RTX 3070 Ti numbers are probably going to be quite accurate in terms of how many CUDA cores it has, which again we've already discussed at length on the channel. So it'd be interesting to see how it performs up and down the stack in different applications at different clock frequencies. So I don't think there's anything that is unsurprising in these results. Again, I'd leaked multiple times that the results are definitely behind Ampere. The question is the software ecosystem, and furthermore, and a couple of people brought this up in the live stream when Amy and I were live streaming the AMD event. What does this actually mean for support from developers? Because let's face it, some developers are really lazy. My suspicion, and I could be totally off base here, my suspicion is that lazy console ports will probably be much closer in ray tracing performance on AMD and NVIDIA hardware, simply because, well, they're lazy, and because the ray tracing functionality on the consoles is so much closer compared to the desktop implementation, it's not that much work for optimization. Then again, I suspect games which especially have RTX branding on them, we all know which ones, those are probably going to really benefit from NVIDIA's, let's say, investment. And if I were NVIDIA, that's what I would do. We already got confirmation yesterday, which basically seems to indicate that AMD have some type of upsampling technology. It's DLSS-like technology, super resolution, and I did leak that this existed as well in a driver update. I'm again curious how this actually performs and looks aesthetically. For example, let's say you had a game running at 1440p and then you upscaled it to 4K. What's the accuracy of it, especially when games are in motion? What is the performance impact with NVIDIA's DLSS? It's pretty nuts. I would say that 1080p to 4K looks actually pretty damn good in some games. DLSS 1, definitely quite rough. DLSS 2, yeah, it's really impressive. It's still not perfect. There are still times where the GPU just doesn't quite get it right, especially on finer details, like, for example, writing on signs at farther distances, and harsh transitions in terms of like tiles, that type of stuff. Like, it can look a little weird, but I think we are getting there, and I really believe that upsampling technology is going to be critical. The other benefit too is this also, as we discussed yesterday, works on both the Xbox and the PlayStation using AMD's open source tooling. And that is obviously really good in terms of how developers need to implement it. I think it's really early to know at the moment how these cards are going to perform. It's going to be a very interesting next several months. And speaking of things which are interesting, here's one for you. Intel have actually nuked the mystery of Intel's Rocket Lake S. Yep, this one was something really unexpected. I actually had intended to record earlier today, but I got a couple of DMs telling me, wait up, just hold, because Intel are going to be announcing something, and they did. And we now have Rocket Lake S. This is taking place a week before Ryzen 5000 series launches. Of course, that's based on Zen 3. Rocket Lake S is now confirmed to feature 8 cores, 16 threads, and is confirmed to rely on the Cypress Cove architecture. There were tons of speculation exactly what this was. Was it Willow Cove? Was it Sunny Cove? And now, well, we actually know because Intel have confirmed it. They've confirmed that Cypress Cove is Ice Lake / Sunny Cove. So Cypress Cove, Sunny Cove. I mean, you have to admit they sound quite similar to one another. The really funny thing about this is that quite a long time ago, I actually reported that Rocket Lake was indeed a backport, and a number of people were very skeptical about that, but a couple of sources had confirmed that that was the case. And I think this is really a testament to show that even a backport where the actual initial design, Ice Lake, or Sunny Cove, whatever you want to call it, had already been bought up, the actual act of just transitioning it to a different process, again, it's 14nm, is not, it's not trivial. And this is why so many of these leaks that, features are added last minute, a couple of months before launch on any hardware is so ridiculous. Because think of it this way, Rocket Lake has been rumoured for so long now. And we still don't have it released. Intel instead are only just detailing some of the aspects of it. So let's continue. They didn't provide exact details to the core design, so we don't have an in-depth block diagram or anything like that, unfortunately. They did confirm it's a double-digit percentage IPC improvement, but double-digit can mean 10%, it could mean, 99%. It really doesn't give us anything that's specific. I have heard it's in the low teens, but that was some time ago, so that could have definitely been shifted to be higher, or it could be totally inaccurate and it's too high. Nevertheless, we are looking at the 11th generation here, so this means that we're going to be seeing 11900K, 11700K, and so on and so on. But again, it tops out at 8 cores, 16 threads. The rumour has it that, well, it's kind of weird, but the lower end SKUs allegedly will still feature 8 cores, 16 threads, but the clock frequency will diminish, although there is contrary evidence there. One thing we are certain of, because Intel have confirmed it, is that the memory speed now is 3200 MHz officially, which is a decent upgrade over 2933. Of course, overclocking will be permitted, and you can do whatever you want there, assuming the memory controller and your memory itself and whatever don't go bang. There is also Intel's Xe low power graphics, which offer a 50% increase over Gen 9. Does that matter? Well, I mean, for certain uses, yes. There is also improvements in overclocking according to these official slides. What that means in depth, we don't know. There have been a number of leaks about that, but leaks do not equal truth. Furthermore, there is deep learning boost support, VNNI, but not a huge amount of stuff is explored. They've also stated that there's a new Intel 500 series chipset, but if you've already purchased a board, let's say for the sake of argument, you own a current generation Z490 board, you should be able to drop in your Rocket Link processor. This would mean that you can use, in retrospect, PCIe 4 on the current gen boards, but again, that will be down to the various vendors like BioStar and Asus and MSI, whomever, to provide those updates via BIOS. We also have integrated USB 3.2 Gen 2 and various other improvements onto the board. So, theoretically speaking, this is going to be a rather nice increase in performance. They are stating that the PL is 125 watts, PL2 is 250 watts, and again, up to 8 cores, 16 threads. So, will it be enough? That's the question. Honestly, my guess is that Intel are going to market this towards gaming, and you will get people who purchase Rocket Lake for gaming, and they will be happy for it because they are Intel fans, and if it gets a few extra frames per second, just for example, than Zen 3, hardcore gamers will probably purchase it. And let's face it, for pure gaming, even in a couple of years, we will not need more than 8 cores, because the consoles only have 8 cores and their CPUs are nowhere near as fast in terms of clock frequency compared to, let's say, Zen 3, and they also are not as fast in terms of IPC. With that said, is it going to be enough? I imagine Rocket Lake will be marketed towards people who are pure hardcore gamers, and it's really going to come down to the clock frequency. I've heard that the clocks can go up to 5.3 gigahertz, but I'm not sure about that, honestly. It would be really high. I mean, it isn't to say that it won't happen, but I've not seen any hard evidence of it. We have seen high clock frequencies in leaks, but whether we're going to see all-core 5.3, I don't know. To me, the real WinRAR from Intel will be Alder Lake. And the rumour has it that Rocket Lake launches early next year, like Q1, I'm hearing, before March. But Alder Lake is rumoured to launch Q3, more realistically Q4 next year. Which I honestly would say that if you're upgrading from something older, let's say 6700K or something like that, fine, by all means. But if you've got Comet Lake, is it really worth throwing your money down on Rocket Lake when it could be a really short platform? We don't know. As assuming, of course, Alder Lake does not see a delay. It's possible that Alder Lake will not launch at all in 21, and it could launch in 22. And Alder Lake is even weirder because it is Golden Cove plus Gracemont, which is obviously a hybrid design. It's a totally different socket. It's socket 1700, LGA 1700, uses DDR5 as well. So it's kind of weird because Intel are literally moving to this platform with the 500 series, PCIe 4, DDR4, and then, I mean, it could be, let's say, 6-9 months later, that's just gone. LGA 1700 comes in with DDR5, PCIe 5. At that point, too, we can probably imagine AMD will also be getting ready to release their next generation processors, which the rumour has it, and I've had it almost basically confirmed to me, that it's essentially a refresh of Zen 3. Well, As always, we can only wait and see. With all of that said though, thank you very much for watching the video. The normal stuff, if you have enjoyed it, like, share, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.